Could you tell me your name and job title?
My name's Cody Wood, and I own Willamette Valley Lamb.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. In his way, the meat cutter is an artist. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
How's the seat? You're good?
I'm good.
Feeling good? Okay. Could you chronicle for us some of the details of your path of how you got to the current job and current career, current vocation that you're doing? Some of the just milestones of the path as you recollect it. And I'd love to hear some of that.
So I started working at a livestock auction while I was in college for engineering, and I would bring home just oddball animals. I think the first one I ever got was a Hereford bull, a miniature Hereford bull. And I would bring home oddball cattle and sheep. Started out with 3 sheep, kind of like that. Realized they were a better fit for the climate in Eugene, Oregon. Like they were kind of what more suited the sheep were. So I started out liking cattle better, but then kind of as time went on, I started to like sheep better because they fit the environment better in Western Oregon.
And where were you bringing these animals home to? This would be like the land where you grew up, or
I'd bring. My parents had 40 acres, but they didn't really want me to put animals on it, so I'd use a little land from my aunt. Just kind of anybody I could talk into letting me put some animals out. I'd stick some animals on their property.
Nice. And this is near Eugene.
Yep. And this is backyards and nothing, like little 2-acre pieces.
Wow. But you were able to convince them. People said, go ahead.
Oh, they were, friends and neighbors, family.
Yeah. Okay, so you're bringing home some cattle, and then you're realizing that the sheep might be a more acclimated or better choice for the land that you were at.
There's a lot of mud, so the cattle make a lot of mud in our area. Wintering them is really tough. We have the growing season where we can run lots of cattle, feed lots of cattle, but the wintertime is really hard, so the sheep fit in a year-round system much better.
Okay.
Where we're at.
So you started bringing home more sheep.
Yeah, well, I got 3, and then I got 10, and then I got 60. 60 was kind of a real flock that I kind of took care of year-round, year after year. And then I got out of college, and I decided that instead of engineering, I would rather be a rancher. So then I got 700 sheep from one of the slaughter plants in California sent me 700 sheep to feed.
Wow. And
I bought 200 ewes, took out a little debt, but not terrible. Just bought electric fencing, a pickup and stock trailer, and then, started fencing off farm fields. So in our area, we can graze a lot of farm fields. The farmers, they'll take their crop. After their crop's taken, we can put a fence around it, turn animals out. Or sometimes in the wintertime, before the crop's taken, we'll graze it through the wintertime to kind of hold the crop back. Annual ryegrass will be in the crop. And then the farmer will kick us off, and they'll let it go to seed, harvest it in the summer.
Okay. So you're moving your animals around a lot at this point, opportunistically, kind of to whatever the next paddock that makes sense or that is available to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, when I started out, that was definitely the case. And now I've progressed to having some permanent leases where the animals just kind of stay on farms. I've got year-round leases on some of these farms. So I'm progressing into a more stable system, but before it was kind of like the game Hungry Hippos, just, fence a field off, turn the animals out, and then fence another field off, turn the animals out, and kind of just rotated them, around on farm fields.
So you got 700 head of sheep, and then 200 ewes, you said.
Yeah.
And you got your pickup, stock trailer, and some fencing, and you're going for it. I'm curious about any moments, aha moments, where you were realizing this is for me, this is my thing, I want to keep doing this, or was it a little bit more gradual, or you know what I mean? So
I'd say it was kind of the opposite. It's a really fun job to work with livestock every day, but the money is not straightforward, and so there was a lot of moments where I was like, man, am I in the right game here? Is there a bright future in this? That was the hardest part.
There are a lot of trying to discern that through the younger years, what you're saying.
And when I was beginning, it was really hard because I was not good at farming. I did not know how to grow animals very well. So I had good luck with the market timing, and the market went up, and I was able to sell most of my animals and go to New Zealand for a year. And that was really helpful to learn how to be a better sheep rancher.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So you said you had this opportunity or this window where you realized you could sell your whole flock off or all your animals and then peace out. How did that unfold for you?
So the sheep market went up to like $2 a pound. It was really, really high. And everybody wanted to buy sheep. They wanted to buy my ewes, everything. So I think I kept a few hundred animals, but I sold almost everything. And I cleared my debts, put some money in the bank, and had kind of a year off, and was in New Zealand working on a farm there. And as far as grass management and livestock management, that was the best thing I've ever done.
And was it very intentional, like I'm going to New Zealand to improve my game and be mentored by these New Zealand grass farmers, or was a little bit of, I'm not sure where I'm at with this vocation, but I would like to do this trip and see what happens?
No, I was definitely trying to improve my numbers, improve my game.
Gotcha.
So I went to New Zealand very intentionally to come back after a year and buy back in and continue my farming.
Gotcha. Now tell me, how did that go? That time in New Zealand, did it pan out to be everything you hoped it would be? And what did you learn there, or what happened there?
So what do we do? Just better management of the ewes, making sure they're always fat, how to manage them when they're lambing out. So that picked up a lot. Replacement ewe lambs. So we raise a ewe lamb for replacement. If you breed her at, say, 80 pounds, she doesn't want to have babies very much. It doesn't work very good. If you get her to 110, 120 pounds for breeding, then she has, very reliably has babies. So that picked up my game a lot, is more lambs out of my ewe lambs. And then grass management. When I was here, everybody's talking about tall grass grazing and large covers on their fields. And so I was doing that, and large mobs too. I had my sheep in 601 mob during lambing season and stuff. When I went to New Zealand, they're grazing their grass like right on the deck, like 2 inches, 3 inches high. And I thought, this isn't right. But their lambs were big, and their numbers were much better than mine. Also, they had their ewe flock split up into groups of 100. So every paddock had 100 ewes in it. The ewes could find their babies real well. They had them on a rotation, but kind of a moderate rotation. And the grass was, 3 inches tall, but really, really digestible. So they were getting much higher gains. So when I went home, I tried that, and I think my weaning weights went up like 20%. So not that I was good before, but that was a real big help to the business. And this is perennial ryegrass and white clover pastures.
Okay. In New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a really positive experience in New Zealand. Took away some nice... Were you working for one guy there, or did you work for a few different
Worked
guys?
for one farm there.
Okay.
Wilkins Farming, New Zealand.
Okay. Was it a woofer kind of scenario?
That was a paid gig.
Paid gig?
Yeah.
How did you set that up?
Lots of emails. So I sent emails to anybody I could find over there. There's some job websites, and anyway, eventually something stuck. It took like 100 emails. I don't know.
Yeah. And did you have like a pool of farmers that you're like, I would love to work with any of these 10 guys, and you just contacted them all, or was just this one guy?
It was it was just continually like just looking at a farm, kind of figuring out if it was something I was after. The right climate. Where I went in New Zealand was very similar to Oregon, so I went to the Southland. And I thought
intentionally.
I thought that would be a good, very applicable to the climate I'm working in Oregon.
Gotcha. And finally gave you the green light, and then you flew out there. Did he give you housing too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a pretty good gig. It was, I think, $15 an hour in New Zealand and a house. So it was pretty comfortable over there. It was plenty of money.
Now let's real quickly before we move on. Let's go back to why New Zealand. Out of all the maybe regions of the world, with sheep operations, like even compared to other places in the United States?
So the farms in England are real nice and comparable, but a lot of the flocks are smaller, and a lot of them lamb out indoors. They have babies indoors, and that's not something I'm too interested in. In New Zealand, the flocks are larger, and they lamb out outdoors, and I thought that was a better fit. Australia is also another big sheep-producing country, but that's much drier than Oregon, so it wasn't a very good fit. And then there's developing countries that have big sheep flocks, but they're not as tight on their management, in my opinion. It seems like New Zealand was tight on their management and, like big flocks, large farms.
Okay, so you get back to the United States.
I think they know we're doing this.
Yeah, they do, dude. That guy looked at me. He's just joking. So you get back to the United States, and you're like, you've gleaned some really beneficial strategic tips and strategy improvements, and you buy back in. You're back in Eugene. Mm-hmm. And are you still working on the same land? What did your operation look like once you got back to Eugene?
So pretty much I walked back into most of my leases. Kind of everything came back into place. Before I left, I let some of my friends have the leased ground that I was leasing. And so when I came back, they let me have it back, I guess. And I was back into my old spot, which was pretty good. I didn't have much trouble getting back into it. That said, the market wasn't as favorable as what I left. So the couple hundred sheep that I held on to lost a ton of value while I was gone. So the money I thought I had when I left, wasn't quite as good when I got back.
Okay. So kind of a little bit of a depressed market when you got back in.
Yeah.
Were you still struggling with some of the same doubts that you had before, or did you have more wind in your sails for doing this?
Yeah, so my lamb crops were starting to hit good numbers, and then my weaning weights, my finished weights, I was getting much more efficient with my grazing with the animals. Also, we took on a cattle enterprise. We started, we built temporary electric fencing, and that's key for our operation is the temporary fencing around fields. So electric fence around a 100-acre field. Started doing it with cattle, and I think the first year we had 500 or 600 calves behind electric fence, and me and another guy did it. He would own them. He would go out and do the health work, vet checks and stuff, and then he would gather them up. All I had to do was build an electric fence, put out a water trough, and change batteries to make sure the fence was hot all the time. We run these fences off batteries, car batteries.
Now, at this point, you're under a business name, and is this other gentleman an employee working for you? Is that the model that you had set up?
No, I didn't have any employees for quite a while.
Okay.
It was just a one-man show, and so he owned the cattle. He was kind of the cattle owner. So he'd come in and check his cattle. Me and him kind of set this temporary grazing thing up together on some farms around, and we do it in the summer, kind of into the winter. Kind of December 1st is our last day most years at this point.
What else should we know as far as some of the details leading up to your current operation? I know at some point you decided to try to learn butchery skills. I don't know where that fits into the story.
So what I realized is that the market for cattle and sheep is a roller coaster, and it can be crippling. And if you kind of rely on buying some feeder lambs or feeder cattle, and you can't just have a ewe flock the whole year. There's a lot of extra feed you're missing, so you need to find some extra animals. You can run them what's called on the gain, where you get paid for every pound you put on them. So if you get a 100-pound lamb and you send it away, you feed it for a while, send it away 120 pounds, you get paid for 20 pounds at kind of a lower price. If you buy that animal, say the market's $1.50, well, that 20 pounds is for $1.50. You got $1.50. If you feed it on the gain, it's a lot of times 50 cents. So it's like, a third the dollars. So anyway, but that's speculation. Market goes up and down, and some good luck you can be pretty well off, and some bad luck you can be out of business. And so I realized I need to have a stable market. So that led me to kind of seek trying to find my own markets. And I thought I needed to learn butchery to be able to talk to the people, that were my customers. So.
What did you do then?
What
was your strategy for trying to learn butchery?
So I applied for an internship at Fleischer's in Brooklyn. And so I got that, and that was a 3-month, very intense course where we broke down whole animals every day. Starting on the first day, we started butchering pigs on the first day. It was an awesome experience.
And there's how many people in that program with you at that time?
There was 2 other people, so it was 3 people total.
Jason Yang, was he one of the instructors?
Yeah, we worked with him.
Yeah. And probably a few other instructors.
Yeah, there were some other guys around. Jason was our main instructor, and he was awesome. Really great butcher.
Yes. So, you went for do you say Fleischers or Fleschers?
I don't know.
I always wonder about that. Okay. So you went for the Fleischers program. 3-month program. Jason Yang, he's a badass. I've never met him, but it seems like he's highly skilled. You dive in, you're getting the repetitions with carcass butchery. Was that a good decision? Were you glad you chose that program? Was that a good route to take?
Yes, yeah, it was. It was kind of expensive to live in New York for 3 months. The program took me away from my business in Oregon, and so it was a terrible expense. But today I'm better off for it. I'd say it's 2 years later now, and I've got lots more customers. We're selling lambs in Portland, Seattle, a little bit into the California market. All at a kind of a good price and a stable price. And now we're in 18 Whole Foods here in the Northwest. And anyway, their meat buyer knew of the Fleischer's internship too, so we got to talk meat when I was there. I guess in our initial, sales meetings.
Yeah, and this was so you get back from your butchery program in New York, and now you have a foundation of not only knife skills, but also you probably had a lot more know-how, a lot more knowledge about cuts and where they come from, maybe, would you say?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
And you take that into sort of a sales pitch, and to, as you start talking to butcher shops and trying to network and create buyers for your product. Is that right? You kind of went out and tried to develop these relationships with Whole Foods?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had help and partners on the deal. But the guy, it's Cattail Creek Lamb. They sell most of my lamb to Portland and Seattle. And they were instrumental in the Whole Foods deal. So we went up to meet with the meat buyer at Whole Foods, but it was him that kind of put it all together. That said, the meat business is complicated, and there's a lot of efficiency you can gain if you have any kind of knowledge. And so the meat cutting experience was very important just to learn how to have a meat business, how to understand the numbers so you can do it efficiently. And I enjoyed it too, and I wish I had more time to cut meat. I don't get enough meat cutting in, day to day anymore.
Yeah, fewer and far between.
Yeah.
Sure.
I cut a few lambs up a year. I got to work at a butcher shop for 2 days last spring. That was pretty fun.
Custom shop?
Yeah, a little custom shop nearby.
Nice. So I would imagine your dabbling in butchery really kind of greases the groove for your interactions with butchers and meat shops and gives you some validity. Do you feel like you're perceived as a little bit more valid or a little bit more legit? Or how does that, your foundation of butchery, come into your interactions with butchers?
That's right. Just the confidence to talk to them kind of on their level, in their language. So that's important. Understanding what they're looking for in a product and then trying to produce that for them.
So let's talk about your current operation as it is in recent years and today. Can you detail some of the, what does your program look like now? Right now you're up you're a handful of hours away from your operation. Why are you here now, and who's taking care of things back at home, and what kind of employee base do you have, and what kind of numbers or what kind of directions are you pushing things now?
So yeah, I'm in Seattle right now, and I'm doing 4 Whole Foods demos where I hand out bits of lamb to customers as they walk up to the meat case. So that's 4 hours away from home. I've got a worker named Carlos at home who's awesome. He's worked with me for 2 years now, and I can get away because of him. He's good. He's a really good employee. We have interns throughout the year, and one of our interns we hired for our project in California. So I guess now we're feeding cattle in California, kind of in the Bay Area. We have sheep and cattle in Oregon, kind of near Eugene, a little north of there. We're growing some beets out in Burns, Oregon for grazing cattle. And then we have my friend has an operation on the coast that I help manage. And it's 700 acres and a couple hundred ewes that we manage on the South Oregon coast. So quite spread out, but with good help, and a good structure of the business, it's manageable for sure.
You have an apprentice base or an intern base also. Tell me about that program.
So, we have a couple of interns throughout the year. We have our farm on the coast. Some of them stay there. It's a beautiful farm, has views of the ocean. And then in the valley near Eugene, we have a couple interns there as well. So right now we've got, I think, 2 interns, but we just kind of have a revolving door. And for them, it's working with animals every day. They get to learn how to ride 4-wheelers, learn how to use a border collie. Pretty fun, and then kind of the shortest is 3 months, and we've had one up to a year, and he's now working in California.
Okay. Let me come back to that for a moment, because I want to talk more about your apprentices, but I forgot to ask, at what time did you sort of brand the business and come up with your business name, and kind of like, when did that happen in the process?
So my branding is not perfect yet. I work with kind of other people's brands. So Cattail Creek is not my business, but most of my lambs sell through there. And then there's some other smaller ones. They buy from me as well. Essentially, I kind of fill in their gaps in the year. So they buy lambs from me when they don't have their own. And so they have good markets. The marketing is a lot of work, so being a sheep rancher is a big enough job. Trying to be a big sheep rancher is a big job.
Yeah. So did that happen naturally, or did you kind of come up with this idea of like, I want to leave the marketing to other people so I can focus on full-time sheep ranching?
Yeah, I guess it's what I've chosen to do with my day-to-day.
Yeah.
So,
because a lot of farmers might try to do both, right?
Yeah.
And
I would say that I'm more of like a helper for these other guys. I help them do. I mean, I'm up here in Seattle doing marketing for Cattail Creek right now. He's doing some Whole Foods demos in Portland today. I've kind of gotten to the point now where I've got animals in several different locations, and you become quite vulnerable when that happens. I've kind of structured the business now where I don't have to be in any one spot. There's enough workers or whatever in each spot to handle it. But if one of them gets injured unexpectedly, I'm the guy that fills in there. So that's kind of my lifeline, I guess, at this point, or my safety valve is, if I have to go work, I'm available.
So you got boots on the ground, and then you're kind of managerial, and you fill in where you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure things would get behind, and the office work would get behind, but if Carlos broke his leg, I would be ready for it. I would, at least have the free time, and you can always push some of that stuff off, to the future.
Yeah.
Whereas taking care of animals, that's today,
Yeah. So you're the safety net, so to speak.
Yeah.
Can come in and fill whatever holes as needed.
Is that a Christmas card or
this? Maybe it is, dude. It's a note from some friends. It says peace on it.
All right.
You can see how far we get with me and my wife's mailing system here. It's like kind of barely open to this one. Oh, no, yeah, this is with love from the Methow Valley. You ever been up there? It's like Winthrop, and it's North Cascades.
Okay.
Just beautiful. Okay, so the hell is my question? So there's one more, something about your current it's going to come to me. It's not the Apprentices, because I want to get to that in a second. Here's the question. Would you say, do you view your operation as reproducible, as a good format that could be utilized in other parts of the country and by other farmers in their attempts to be economically viable? Do you see the format you've sort of chosen or come upon as being reproducible?
Well, yeah. No, I think there's opportunity for growth everywhere. And, boy, if you have the right eye for it, you can... There's a lot of opportunity. I think cover crops in the Midwest are a huge opportunity. Temporary electric fencing around those fields, grazing animals in the winter. Northern latitudes are a little tougher as you get farther south. If they have a good cover crop system, that's beautiful. Mild winters. So, and then I think people should, look at competing enterprises. Like you have a dry cow, you have a pair, you have a calf, you have a sheep, you have ewe. All these things, they consume so much per day. You can make so much on these animals. Stacking those against each other, and how much they're going to make per pound of grass that they eat, I think that would be very valuable for a new producer to do those exercises just to learn, how they can most efficiently use, the grass that they have.
So that's like a math equation. You're talking about kind of looking at the type of animals you have and trying to figure out maybe like a feed conversion rate or how much daily feed a certain type of animal might be requiring.
And then how much it's paying for that feed.
Okay.
So, dairy heifers or beef calves, comparing those against each other. Or, I think that's a very useful way to, go into business, is looking at, how much these animals are going to pay and having the right recipe for the resource you've got. And also with the temporary electric fence, just building around a couple hundred acres, the whole world's grazable. You can graze anything. Farm fields, like a broccoli crop in Arizona, they take the top off the broccoli. Then there's, a couple tons of material left that's leafy greens. It's like kale. That could be grazed with animals. There's definitely lots of opportunity out there.
And you're talking about having the right recipe. I imagine as you have apprentices and interns, there's some themes that you are trying to impart to them. There's some maybe bullet points that are kind of overarching motifs that you find yourself maybe highlighting for these young farmers, these young interns, these young apprentices, about what opportunities out there and directions that you suggest they should go in. Tell me some more of those bullet points and some of those useful tips.
So just really keeping an eye on the numbers. Like hay costs a lot of money to feed. So, and farmers feed a lot of hay in this country. So if you do the math, if you've got grass, not everybody has grass, but a lot of times grass is going to be, a third or better the cost of hay, if you can figure out a good system for it. So some people are stockpiling fescue into the fall and then grazing it in the winter. There's a lot of different models out there. Just running cattle seasonally, that could be another option.
Like a kind of stocker cattle kind of situation, where you're buying 1-year-olds and then you're running them for 6 months, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, and often you can find people to buy them and then you just feed them as a service, I guess. And that, might look like kind of low margins, but sometimes it's a good safe bet. So figuring out your system that way. Wintering animals is expensive. Another thing that's expensive is keeping back replacements. So, looking at how much feed it takes to keep back a replacement versus buying a pregnant cow that's kind of almost ready to calf. That could be a better way. You've got all the feed into her, and all the expense of keeping her for a year, and then you get her just as she drops a calf. Like, that's oftentimes a lot more efficient, I guess, or what is it, a cheaper way to get into the business.
Okay. And So these are the type of things you're telling you're trying to show your interns and your apprentices.
Don't feed too much hay. Really be careful when you keep back replacements. This is to begin with. I've definitely made all these mistakes. I buy a ewe lamb in the summertime, feed her for 2 months, get her pregnant in November. She has a lamb 5 months later. That lamb's for sale. Another 5 months later. That's, we're past a year at that point. And banks don't really work on a system, and your own money shouldn't really work on that system either of, being invested that long.
Smart with the numbers and making sure you're not losing a bunch of money trying to be economically viable.
Yeah.
What are some of the mistakes that you see young farmers making consistently? Or maybe some of the ones that mistakes you made also that you consistently see other young farmers making?
So sometimes, the right resource, having enough land to kind of be an economic unit. So I see farmers with just a small piece of land trying to be meat farmers. It's kind of the micro me model. It's a pretty rough go. Some of them are making it, but it seems like a lot of them are failing at it. I think trying to scale yourself, finding the right resource to jump into, and being a decent scale at least, that's helpful.
Let's break that apart real quick. How would you talk about a micro farmer? How many head would be a micro farmer, and what kind of scale would be maybe a more economically viable scale to jump into?
So you definitely see a lot of guys with the pigs, chickens, some sheep, some beef, whatever it is. It's complicated because you have a lot of different businesses there, and then it's also kind of small, and then you have to convince your customers to pay a lot higher, price for your product. That's all very hard to do. Joe Salatin's doing it well. There's some others around the country doing it well, but it's not an easy business. If you could jump into, say, 500, a resource that can handle 500 ewes or 200 cows, I think that's a good place for a young person to start. So trying to find yourself in that situation, and kind of just looking for that and not really jumping into farming until you can get at least a good start towards those numbers. Yeah.
That makes sense. So one idea might be for a young farmer to get their chops developed through apprenticing and other people's operations, and then once they're ready to embark on their own operation, having those kinds of numbers in mind as you said 500 head
of sheep
as a probably the tipping point where you're going to start making,
and call it 100 head of cattle maybe, and maybe maybe you could get in lower, especially if you're going to farmers markets and direct marketing more, but you kind of got to be at a decent number. And also I'd say interns that go through my apprenticeship, after they're done, 200 head of sheep is nothing. It's an afterthought. You really learn how to handle animals efficiently, learn the strategies to, make a whole year out of them efficiently. Feels like a side job at that point,
200 feels like small potatoes compared to what their capacity is. They could handle quite a number of sheep after an internship. That sounds like a amazing takeaway. As opposed to being on the other side of that, where you're feeling completely swamped by 200 head because you don't have your systems in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to feel like you're going into your own operation and the number of animals you have feels kind of like small potatoes. Feels like sounds like a good place to start, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of them hear say 200 ewes or even 500 ewes and think, wow, that's a lot of animals. And after they get some experience, and the right strategy to handle them, all of a sudden it's not a big number anymore. I would say another mistake that young farmers have, I see a lot of the apprentices I get, they're in my opinion too environmentally focused. They want to save the environment with grazing animals, and I think that's really great. But a lot of times, they're forgetting, to look at their bottom line critically. And I think that you've got to be money focused in this business to really stay in it. You really got to focus on the numbers. And if you're a good grazer and you're an efficient grazer, and you're not feedlining the animals, you're just grazing, that's going to be good for the environment anyway. So you'll get there, that's great, but you need to, focus on the numbers.
Because otherwise it'll sink your ship.
It's a hard business. It's hard to find that recipe that works good. And so you need to definitely focus on how you're going to pay for it all. You see, people coming in at it from all angles. They start with no money and they do some stuff, or they start with a ton of money and then spend a ton of money and then get out of it after 5 or 10 years. Nobody wants to lose money forever. And so to be sustainable, you need to figure out the money part.
What I'm hearing about fiscal responsibility and being aware of money in, money out, and doing the number crunching, did you pick that up over time just through being in the business, or were there any books or resources that really sort of helped you progress in your thinking about that?
I in engineering school, I learned Excel, and that was a huge help because you can, build a whole spreadsheet, change a few variables, and it does all the math for you. That's really quick.
So you utilized Excel?
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
And I'm kind of numbers oriented anyway, but for me, it was I started out with almost no money. Government loans, the government will lend you money with nothing down, FSA loans. And everything I've done had to work or I wouldn't be here right now. So there wasn't room for me to make mistakes or just spend money in the hopes that it comes back. Everything had to work in a decent amount of time. I didn't have, multiple years to have a return. Has to work this year.
So it was you had low margins of error. You didn't have much room to fuck up that big, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other just kind of basic tools? We got an Excel spreadsheet. Do you have any just basic organizational, maybe apps or things like that you might use, or systems like that?
I would say Excel and Google Earth. I use those a lot.
How do you use Google Earth?
Oh, just pasture mapping,
Gotcha.
Branch mapping. We'll do our grazing plan on that. So figure out where we're going to be. Yeah, Google Earth is really handy.
Did you ever get into any of the Alan Savory holistic management model stuff?
I was very very impressed with Alan Savory when I first started my career, and I grazed for 2 years kind of in his model. And I'm not saying his way is one way completely. It's definitely open to interpretation. That said, I almost went broke, and if the market didn't go up very high, I would have probably been bankrupt from reading his books.
Okay.
That said, I've come back around. So I was grazing grass tall, had big mobs of animals, high impact, lots of residual. I thought it was really cool, and I was feeding a lot of animals per acre, but they were not growing. I went to New Zealand, saw them grazing short grass, real tight paddocks, and those lambs were growing very fast. Went home, did that, and it worked. It was good. And at this point, I learned. So if you want to go, the problem is it's lignin. Your grass goes tall, you get a lot of lignin. That's not digestible, so the animals are eating a lot of stuff that's not digestible. I was looking at chicory, plantain, white clover. Those things don't lose their digestibility the same as grass. So came home, a couple of years into it, I started planting chicory, plantain, white clover. No grass in the paddocks, just these 3 herbs. Very high protein, 25% protein in this pasture, and it doesn't go off in the summer. When it gets big, it holds its quality. Now I'm kind of getting back to a system that's more savory, I guess, and we're grazing pastures more at a foot tall, knee-high tall, and the animals are doing good on it. And I'm not saying I've got it figured out. There's still some problems. Really high protein. The animals always have diarrhea from this. We could use maybe a little bit more lignin, but I'm afraid to add grass back into the mix. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And we're not doing we're doing rotation, but it's more of a moderate rotation. We have 3-day shifts, so the animals are on a paddock for 3 days. Shift to the next one. We have, during the growing season, it's a 25-day turnaround. So we're kind of we're grazing taller now, and we're in kind of a moderate rotation, and I think it's a pretty good system. And like I said, everything I do has to work, so that's where we're at.
What caused you to go back to some of the higher grass grazing?
Well, if you read Alan Severy's works, they're pretty compelling, and deep roots, pulling water from deep into the soil, more organic matter on top of the soil when you're done. All that's very good stuff for the pastures and the paddocks. It's just how do you keep the digestibility. I've kind of switched all my paddocks, all my permanent fields to chicory, plantain, white clover. I might have some festoleum in it, which is a grass, but and we're grazing taller at like knee-high stage. Anything more
you can describe about some of the herbaceous, focus on these herbs, or?
Yeah, so, the dairy guys that feed in confinement, they're continually focused on their feed ration. And that's, I don't love confinement dairy operations, but us grazers kind of need to think in the same lines maybe. What are our animals eating? What stage are the grass forage that they're eating? And what's optimal for production, quantity and quality. And I think there's a lot of efficiency to be gained on that. So anyway, we're playing with the right. I think we're playing with the right plant species now, and then just how to make them really, efficient. I guess how to really, optimize that grazing. My lambs are born in April. It's right before the spring flush. Peak lactation is 30 days, so I'm trying to time the spring flush with peak lactation so those lambs can grow as fast as they, possibly can. So my lambs from birth till weaning, say I have an average birth date of the lambs at April 10th, and then we wean them at July 10th. My best number so far is I got 96 pounds in 90 days. So these lambs are growing over a pound a day. Not quite. I guess take away birth weight, they're a little under a pound a day. But still, a pound a day on a lamb is cooking. That's like 4 or 5 pounds on a calf per day or something. After that, they slow down. We're getting between 0.3 and 0.5 pounds a day. I want to hit that 0.5 pounds consistently, and that's where I'm trying to make my gains. It gets hot. The animals aren't as happy. The grass the forage isn't as happy, when it gets past that 60, 70 degrees. The forages I'm using like 60 degrees. 60, 70 degrees, that's peak photosynthesis for the grasses I'm using. So I'm trying to find how I can get that half pound a day after that. So ultimately I would have April-born lambs. They would all be slaughtered by like September, October. That would be my ideal.
You're coming in with your crew. Certain intervals, you're setting up temporary corrals, you're getting a bunch of animals in there, you're weighing them, and you're maybe combining that with veterinary stuff, or I don't know how.
So one thing that's very much helped, we have an Autodrafter now that catches the lambs, reads their identification tag, and then sorts them by weight. And so we can check our weights, weekly, and we take one of our farms, and it's just kind of a research farm or a learning farm, and we just weigh the animals every week just to try and hone in our system. And then we try to keep track of our daily gains on the rest of the sheep by weighing them at least monthly during the growing season. This is, summertime stuff. And we'll do it by weight gain. So we'll know that this lamb gained 0.7 pounds a day, and this lamb gained 0.2 pounds a day. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum. This one probably has worms or foot rot or something. So it goes into the pen, and it gets treated for something. We've tried to figure that out later. The one that's growing 0.7, there's nothing wrong with him. He's back out in the field to eat grass. And the ones that are in the sick pen are the ones that need attention, that are growing slow for any reason. We put a dot on them. So at the end of the season, when we're keeping back our replacement ewes, we sort out ewes that don't have any dots on them. Or a few dots, So they get a different dot every time when they get worked. And ultimately, we're trying to breed a sheep that performs well in our system. One that can grow fast without a lot of inputs.
What was that product that you said you use for monitoring weight?
Oh, it's an Autodrafter. Mine's a Racewell Autodrafter. There's 3 varieties. They come from New Zealand. Essentially, it's like a weigh crate that you push the animal into. It's got air. It's got compressed air powers it, and then electricity. So you have to have air and power. We have portable air compressor and portable generator, and can set it up anywhere. Our corrals, pinned together and panels or whatever, so we could set those up anywhere as well.
Any last things you want to talk about? And then I would love to hear where can people find you to ask you more questions about this, or anything you want to plug.
Okay. Well, I'd say, I'm still learning, and I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, because I don't know it all, and I'm learning a lot. It's a fun business, and I think that it can be a very profitable business, but it's just kind of trying to find those efficiencies. Where to find me? My Instagram handle is Cody Wood, but it's WOULD, so CODYWOULD. You can DM me there, I guess.
Solid.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. This is great.
Oh, good.
Thanks for chatting with me.
I hope this is entertaining to some of the butchers out there. I know this isn't completely, red meat material, but it's part of the process.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is that butchers, we all need to become more knowledgeable about farming. It can only help us. Whether we're going to be actually farming or not, the more that butchers know, this is a very good thing. So I'm learning a ton from talking to you, and I want to, keep improving my knowledge of this side of the industry too. So thank you, man.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.